Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a really warm welcome to today's webinar. We're looking at enterprise social networking for your shared services organization, how to unleash intelligence to enhance your shared services performance. I'm delighted to be having on our speaker panel today two gentlemen from Nimbus Tibco, and that this session is sponsored by Nimbus Tibco. So, presenting your speaker lineup for today, my name is Susie West, and I'm the founder and CEO at sharedserviceslink.com. I'm joined by Nigel Kilpatrick, who's the Director, Head of Nimbus EMEA at Nimbus Tibco, and Paul Doyle, Solution Consultant at Tibber. So let's have a look at what the agenda looks like for the next 60 minutes. I'm going to be touching on the importance of questions and then handing directly over to Nigel and Paul. We'll then be taking your questions in the last 10 minutes of this webinar. In terms of how the question works, you joined onto this webinar for a reason today, so please make a note of what your key question is or your questions are, and make sure that you send them through to me nice and early. You just need to enter them into the red box that's highlighted on the screen and submit them to me. The sooner you get them to me, the more likely it is that they will be asked, and do remember to stay on the line for the last 10 minutes when we'll be asking your questions. Right, before I hand over to our first presenter, Nigel, I'd just like to do a number of back-to-back polls, please. So coming up on your screen now, starting off with wanting to just understand what your level of understanding is of enterprise social networking today. So if you can make sure that you participate as much as possible in these polls, please. The more of you that participate, the more meaningful the results, and we always show the results of these polls live to just help you with your benchmarking. So what is your level of understanding of enterprise social networking today? Is it none at all? Is it limited, familiar? Are you fully educated? Or are you fully engaged and actively participating? 73% of you have voted, closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. 78% of you voted there. Thank you very much indeed. Coming up on your screen now is the set of results. So we've got 44% of you saying limited, 35% familiar, and 2% of you fully engaged and actively participating. Thank you very much. Let's move on to our next back-to-back poll coming up on your screen now. Where are you in your adoption of social networking within your organization? Are you evaluating it? Are you in the middle of implementing it? Are you developing it post-implementation? Or is it something you haven't really considered yet? We're up to 47% of you voting. Up to 54 if you can continue to vote if you haven't already, and I will be closing the poll once we get past 70, please. We're at 69%, closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. We're at 74% of you voting there. Thank you very much. Let's have a look at the results. So quite interesting results there, actually. We've got 19% developing social networking post-implementation, so that's a very positive response there. 35% of you haven't yet considered it. Our final poll in the back-to-back poll before I introduce Nigel, coming up on your screen now, please. This is as far as how many hours a week do you personally spend on social networking sites? Is it 0 hours, 1 minute to an hour, just over 1 minute, 1 hour to 5 hours, or is it more than 5 hours per week on social networking sites, largely for personal reasons? We're at 73% of you voting. If you haven't already voted, please do so, and I will be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. So thank you very much. We were at 83% of you voting. So coming up on your screen now. Interestingly, only 10% of you spend 0 hours on social networking sites, and 8% of you more than 5 hours. So very interesting results there. And I'd now like to introduce Nigel Kilpatrick from Nimbus Tibco. Over to you, please, Nigel.
Thank you very much, Susie, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all, no matter where you're dialing in from. What I'd like to do is put things into context for you around the topic of enterprise social networking. I think it's slight difficulty moving the slides forward at the moment, Susie. There we go. So for those of you who know me on the call, it's fortunate that I'm not going to spend too much time talking today, because we've got a lot to cover around TIBA, and again, Susie, there seems to be an issue with the slides going forward. So basically, here's the agenda, what we're trying to get across today. I'm going to try and put into context what I think is probably the most critical KPI in shared service organizations today, and then give a very brief overview of Nimbus, but more importantly, put into context what social networking and process can do. Then I'm going to hand over to Paul, who will take you through the TIBA life cycle, so to speak, and then we're going to put more into context about why social networking can become important rather than just an interesting application in the business, and then finish off with around a demonstration of what I think is a great application for Nimbus and TIBA together in a shared service environment. So I'm just trying to move forward. So without any question or doubt, the most critical KPI today is customer service, and Susie has kindly allowed me to borrow some of the results from a conference last week that she held, and with some interesting results. And I think if we look at all of the areas around customer service, you will see that it's a very high percentage related to that single topic. And about 77% of the results are focused on building customer service as a key KPI in shared services. So the next generation of shared services is undoubtedly going to be around the basis of delivering high value, high customer service. I think some other polls that were supporting that showed that what is driving change in your shared service organization today is around improving service. Now, as I move forward onto the next slide, you can see this is being supported yet again. I'm having some issues with the slides coming forward. And this one here, it's very interesting because it shows the amount of time that you're spending in getting, Susie, some issue with the slides coming forward at the moment. Okay, this one is around how do you measure customer experience. And what was remarkable about this result was the amount of limited interaction shared service directors and shared service organizations were actually having with their internal customers. I think the most engagement with the end customers was monthly. And I want to pose a question today, is that why not measure experience every time there is an experience? And that's something where TIBA and Nimbus together can really add value to the whole KPI around customer services. And again, when we look at how you're measuring customer services as the level of KPI in terms of doing face-to-face interviews, and that's fantastic that people have the ability to evaluate the level of service being delivered by shared service organizations, the ability to do it face-to-face. But my question really is, what happens when face-to-face interviews are just not possible? What happens when a downturn in customer service is being experienced through the shared service organization, way out of the realm of geographical responsibility? But you still want to get that and capture that data and be able to use that experience, and TIBA and Nimbus together should be able to give you a platform to do that. And again, this is the kind of final KPI measurement that Susie talked about last week in the Shared Service Link conference, and thank you for giving us the data, Susie. But hopefully everyone, apart from the 9% where you're looking at here, who think that customer service is either important or very important, and only 9% think that it's quite important, but there are other drivers to worry about. But it just shows the high level of value and how we are moving through a maturity curve of shared services. We're now getting into profitability questions, we're now getting into operational excellence questions, we're now getting into continuous improvement questions, but the single most important factor to me for the longevity and success is surely around customer services. So, and I think to put this into context, and thank you for Shakar from Nokia for allowing me to use this, when he presented the key lessons learned around having a very successful shared service organization in Nokia, he had the 3C formula. And there are two parts of this, I think, that are very pertinent. One of which is about make sure you have connect. Personal connections and networkings are far better and quicker than the traditional old standing operating procedures that you probably would deploy. And of course, there was the essence around controls, making sure that you have enough controls in the activities to have enough warning signs of anything going wrong. But finally, he talked about culture. And again, this is a key point, is that it's not trying to make an Indian speak like an American, but it's building that DNA, that fabric right across the team, no matter how geographically dispersed that team may be, but they're all singing from the same song sheet. They've all got the single version of the truth and all striving for excellence in execution in the same way. So that's putting into context around the topic today, and I'm just going to give you a very brief overview on Nimbus. Again, we can dive more into this later on, and we can certainly follow up and have more detailed conversations with you. I know that most people on the call probably know about Nimbus anyway from the shared service link conferences. But our vision is very simple, and to have this vision as a business process management platform is quite unique, because I don't know any other companies that have this vision. And that's about making the life of everyone become easier, faster, and more valuable for everyone in the enterprise. And it's not, when we look at the words more valuable, it's not just around value they get from an individual, it's the value of contribution they can give by being able to perform better. And I think, and I'm going to put three numbers on the screen now for you to look at, and these are quite staggering. 480 billion, 1.3 trillion, and then there's a number 10. And normally when I'll be having face-to-face discussions with you, we'll be talking about what these numbers really mean and represent. But let me just share them with you. The 480 billion is the amount of money wasted every year by Fortune 500 companies. And this waste is coming through inefficiency of processes. And we can absolutely correlate that to customer services. The 1.3 trillion is the amount of money wasted in the public sector in the US. Again, this is just not Nimbus talking about this. This is validated by McKinsey and the Tech CEO Council. But the number 10 is the most worrying. It's the danger number. And that is a number of global 2,000 companies which will be toppled in the next probably 3 to 5 years by not paying attention to what is easily detectable, and that is the process of the business. We're already seeing it in Europe with the Woolworths debacle, and many others I'm sure is bound to happen. And this is where business process in the world of Nimbus really matters. So what is it that we do in context? Well, we are all about worrying about all the activities, what people actually do in the organization. So we're worried about making sure that all of the old traditional world of only worrying about all the budget of process management going into automated activities is now superseded by the ability to capture what is actually going on and the manual activities linking into the systems as a whole. So we're capturing all the structured data and the unstructured data together to allow a very efficient flow of process. And that's probably the key element of what Nimbus is all about. So if we put this into context now, and again, this will apply to many companies, many of you on the call right now. This is daily activity, business as usual, having loads and loads of projects going on around the organization. Each of these projects typically outputting different processes. Some of the processes that are being outputted are probably the same, but the left hand and the right hand don't know what's actually going on. And what Nimbus at the core of it is to build a central process repository where all of the activities that are going on in the business are connected to that central process repository, so there's complete harmonization or governance around the content. So you have a complete integrated management platform as your governed process architecture, which is delivered to everyone in the organization through an intelligent operations manual. And that's delivered on mobile phones, on tablets, on PCs, or even people who are not even connected to the network can still participate in what their responsibilities and accountabilities for processes are. And that's the main function of Nimbus is this integrated management platform with the intelligent operational manual combined. So it gives me enormous pleasure to actually introduce Paul Doyle from Tibber, and I would say that the acquisition of Tibico of Nimbus has been paramount, and for me, in this one particular area, it's our ability now to add social networking into process, and for me, turning social networking to become not interesting for the organization, but very, very important. So I'd like to hand over Paul Doyle and Tibber.
Great, thanks, Nigel. So yeah, I'm Paul Doyle. I work for a part of the business, part of TIBCO called Tibber. And what we essentially do, or I essentially do, I'm a solutions consultant within the Tibber organization. And today I'm going to talk about enterprise social networking with a focus on Tibber and as a platform for the enterprise. Okay, so just want to show my screen, and so this is what I do. The agenda for today is let's talk about the landscape for today. So if I just share my screen. Okay. Apologies for that. So we're going to talk about the landscape where we are with social networking, why social networking is important, particularly for the enterprise. We've seen a massive growth in various different types of social networking and Web 2.0 technologies within the consumer market. But it's essential to understand why that could be important, how that plays a part within the enterprise. And then moving on from there, we'll go into a demonstration of what Tibber actually looks like and kind of get a real good picture of how it works day to day. So from a landscape today, we have there's four kind of main elements I'd like to talk about. The first of all is globalization. One of the things that we are seeing more and more, especially with things like shared services, is a consolidation of teams globally. So teams are not necessarily in the same room, in the same building, or even in the same country, and are still expected to work together. People are working more flexibly, coming in at different hours, perhaps working from home, and of course people are working in a more mobile environment. We have tools for everything for communication purposes. So we look at Web 2.0. We're fairly familiar with what Web 2.0 is now. It's been around for a while. So the majority of the content that's accessed on the internet and in the enterprise is actually user-generated. So things like Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube have clearly shown that actually it's not difficult to either provide content for delivery, but have for users to actually post content. And that's something that it's almost like the internet, the consumer market has actually gone ahead and leapfrogged what we do in the enterprise. But one of the difficulties really about introducing those technologies within the enterprise is actually maintaining accuracy and relevancy. So it's all well and good having plenty of data, but if we don't understand, or we can't deliver the data or the content to the right people at the right time, then we're kind of failing in how we actually access that information, and people will just ignore it if you get overwhelmed with information. It used to be that content was king, whereas now it's actually context. People really need to kind of pinpoint the information that's relevant to them. In addition to that, we also have mobility. People expect to have information delivered to them on various different endpoints in various different locations. We have various different operating systems now, especially in the mobile market. You've got 4 or 5 different operating systems that people expect to be able to access corporate data, whether that be email, internet sites, but also from the social networking perspective as well. So what we have typically is this Sunday experience. So users working from home or at their home, and typically in a consumer market, have access to various different types of social networking tools, location-driven, whether they're pushing content up into the internet, and they have these really easy-to-use content delivery mechanisms, and this is typically what they would use perhaps at a weekend. But they walk into work on a Monday morning, and this is what they're faced with. And clearly that kind of illustrates the point I was making about the fact that from a consumer point of view, the consumer has actually leapfrogged the enterprise in terms of the tools and how we work. The difficulty, of course, is who knows who knows who within an organization that might be the right person to speak to, and knowing who has that information and who knows what has the information and where that information is kept is a key part of understanding how, moving forward, how we can access information. And we're at a tipping point. It's understood that 17% of 20-somethings now use social networking tools over email. Now, if that's the case, then clearly people coming into the enterprise, graduates, etc., are expecting to be able to use 2.0 technologies within the enterprise, and that really goes for social networking tools as well. So I'm going to come on to some of the important parts of why social, but before I do, I'm going to come on to, there's 5 key areas that social networking really needs to have to work in an enterprise environment. The first one is it has to be easy, and it has to be easy for all the users. As we all know, if there is a tool that's being used that's very difficult to use, people will walk away from it. It has to be easy to use not only for the end users, but it also has to be fairly easy to use for IT. IT needs to be able to implement it in a fairly quick and easy way. Now, the 3 main content areas are people. People perhaps have the most information. Applications that provide the information, things like Nimbus, but there are other applications as well, of course, such as SAP, Salesforce, Oracle, Siebel, etc. And content. Content could be stored on file servers, it could be in SharePoint, but ultimately we need to provide a mechanism to easily transfer content and relevant content between these different areas. The content needs to have context as well. So we need to be able to deliver the right content to the right people. Now that could be from a geographical perspective, it could be from a team perspective, or it could be from a person perspective. So people should be able to access data that's relevant to them and actually be able to select the information or be given the information that's the most accurate and the most up-to-date for that particular person. And of course, it's got to work in the way people want to work. It's got to work on multiple different endpoints. But in addition to that, what we can do with Tibber is actually provide a mechanism to go into video conferencing, to do instant messaging, and to do chat from your social networking collaboration tool within the enterprise. And of course, we've got to make our IT happy. Tibber can be delivered both on-premises, so it could be hosted within an organization's walls, or it can be hosted or delivered via a cloud. And obviously, from a governance and security perspective, we need to keep IT happy. There are plenty of regulatory requirements and attestations that need to be kept in mind when delivering anything, either from the cloud or on premises. We tend to see that organizations such as central government, finance, legal, often wish to host their data and wish to host their social networking collaboration tools on premises, whereas other organizations are fairly happy to have that data hosted for them. Obviously, it makes things a little bit more efficient if that data is held within a cloud, within a multi-tenant environment. So either way, whichever way you choose to have your social networking delivered from Tibber, that can be flexible. It can be on premises, it could be in the cloud, or in fact, it could be a hybrid of the two. Oh, apologies. So there's a couple of important points. Now, there are several different important points that I'd like that we can cover, but I'm just going to bring out 2 that are very important within the world of Tibber and social networking. And the first one is being able to empower employees to collaborate regardless of where they live or what application is their landing page. Now, they need to be able to collaborate and be able to use Tibber as a platform, and it doesn't matter what social networking tool you're using. That tool essentially needs to be able to connect into third-party applications, and we've got a list of them here, things like Salesforce, Siebel, SAP, Oracle, SharePoint. All of these different applications need to be able to interconnect with Tibber, and that's something that's a real unique thing with Tibber in the fact that we can do this out of the box. So Tibber supports multiple different types of event streams from various different types of enterprise applications where we can deliver this information either into Tibber or out of Tibber, and that's a key differentiate from what we see as our competition. The second most important point, or second important point, is branding. A lot of organizations like to keep their personality and keep it within any kind of social networking tool that they have. Now with Tibber, there are a set of templates where you as an organization, if you choose to go down the Tibber route for social network, can actually keep all of your branding. And we've got an example here from Schneider where they actually chose to remove any references to Tibber. They wanted to keep the look and feel of their intranet that they currently had and extend that onto the Tibber platform. So that's absolutely something that we can do with Tibber, and there are very easy mechanisms to enable you to do this. So now I'm going to go into the demo. I'm going to show what Tibber looks like from a user perspective. And so I'm just going to drop out of the actual presentation, open up the web browser to show what this looks like. So I'm just going to full screen that. Bear with me. Okay. Okay, so I've opened up my Tibber instance, and as you can see, it's a fairly straightforward look and feel to it. What we have in the middle there is essentially my main method of communication. What we have is what is my wall, and it shows the information that's relevant to me. It's the stuff that I subscribe to, or what or the subjects or the people I subscribe to are actually shown on this wall. Now, the first thing I did when I joined Tibber was actually go into my directory. So I'm going to just move to the directory first. And the reason why I looked into the directory was because I needed to understand which people I should be following. Now, in order to do that, I went into the directory, and this directory, incidentally, can be manually added, or it can actually be pulled out of Active Directory or a similar LDAP compliant directory within your organization. And what I'm showing here is actually the hierarchy of the organization I work in, and there I am, and there's my nearest colleague, Matt Ellis. And what I chose to do is I can see his details come straight up there on the screen. I chose to follow Matt, and then I went up to the organization and chose to follow everybody that was relevant to me. If I had chosen to follow every single person within the organization, I think it would be fair to say that I'd be inundated with the amount of data that people push out onto Tibber. So I can then very quickly see who's relevant to me within the organization. So the first thing I did obviously then was to follow the relevant people within my organization. I'm just going to flip to a demo instance of Tibber, so we can do some other things like posting comments, etc. So moving on to the wall, back to the wall again, I can see all of the people that I've subscribed to and all of the subjects as well. And moving down, I can see that people have put posts on there. There's actually one there from a social networking, a SharePoint document. So to give an example of what people post, if I was to pick who I want to post to, I can pick people. So let's say I want to post to a guy called Malcolm. It will pick out several people there, Malcolm. I can also pick subjects, so I could pick HR as well. So I can pick HR to post to. And in there, I can type an example text. And on top of that, I can attach files. Now you can see here that I can actually choose files from my desktop, or I could actually browse SharePoint. So we have a tight integration with SharePoint. A lot of organizations are using SharePoint currently. So why change where you keep your document repository? So it's very easy for me to browse SharePoint to post information onto my wall and onto other people's wall. And so that's typically how we can post within Tibber, and then I can choose to post. Okay, so there's the example, and that's been posted to HR feed, to Malcolm, and obviously to myself. So coming back, we looked at people and the different people that I could subscribe to. So if I go back to people just for a short while, we can actually see how many people are following me and how many people I am following. So within this launch instance of Tibber, I can actually see how I've got 15 people that I'm following. Unfortunately, I've only got one person following me so far because I've only just joined. But moving forward, I'll expect to see more people following me in time. I can also come back to the subjects. I can choose to follow a subject within Tibber. So if we just click on subjects. And these are all of the subjects that have been created within this Tibber instance. Now you can see that there are various different subjects, and within each of these subjects, this is quite unique in that you can follow different subjects and not people. I can pick HR. Now I could, if I wish to, select to follow everything that happens in HR. Now I don't necessarily want to do that, because if I did, anything that's posted to any of these sub-subjects within HR would actually bubble up and be posted to me. So it could be that I'm only interested in what happens within payroll, and so I can choose to follow payroll within HR, then any post to payroll will appear on my wall. If I wish to, I could create a new subject. Now this isn't necessarily something that you can restrict who can create subjects, especially within subjects, so you can actually stop people posting hundreds of different, or creating hundreds of different new subjects. So the subject, I can create a test subject, give it a description, choose a picture for it, and then in here the permission levels, I can create a public subject that anybody could subscribe to, or I can create a private subject that people can't see but I can invite people to, or I can create a subject that people can see but can only access it if I give them approval, or I can create a broadcast subject that essentially is sent out to everybody within the organization or within this particular instance. So if I come back to my home, what I'll do now is actually move across to, before I do move across to my profile, there's a couple of other things in here as well. We've got the poll capability, and so what I could essentially do is create a questionnaire, ask some questions, add a couple of responses, and then post that onto the wall, and I can post that to various different people, or again I can post that to subjects. And you can see here already that somebody has posted a poll asking what flavor somebody likes in terms of ice cream, and we've got vanilla and strawberry within there. I can also tightly integrate Tibber within Outlook and Exchange, so I can essentially create a Outlook invite within Tibber, which will then post into my Outlook calendar, and also forward that out to various different people. So I can send a calendar invite not only to people, again I can send that out to subjects as well. Moving to my profile, I can see that I've made several posts, various different people. I can see my likes. I can also look at about. And so you can see my details in there. The majority of these details are actually pulled out of Active Directory. One of the other really neat things that I can do, though, is set up alerts. Various people within an organization may not wish to use a social networking tool, and so what you can do is actually schedule Tibber to email out whenever somebody posts something. So I could say, for instance, pick Errol in this case. I can ask that whenever he posts anything to me or to the subject that I'm interested in, that post actually is sent to me either in real time, hourly, or daily, and that's actually sent to my email address. So that would be sent to an email address that I've previously set up. From an integration to other application perspective, we can move into the event streams. Now this is really quite key. I talked earlier on about the fact that any social networking tool you have needs to have a seamless integration with third-party applications. In this case, we've got 4 or 5 out of the box. We've got Oracle, RSS feed, Salesforce, SharePoint. We can also create voice memos within Tibber as well. But it's not limited to these 5. We can actually, there are actually out-of-the-box integration points to all different types of enterprise applications, obviously, and that includes Nimbus as well. So it tightly integrates with Nimbus. Tibco as an organization are a middleware company. This is our pedigree. This is where we've come from. The actual interface to users is a natural progression to that, and obviously that's why we've made such an investment in Tibber and the social networking space. On top of the work streams, there's also the concept of live streams. So actually, users don't necessarily need to leave their Tibber instance in order to be able to gain feeds from other social networking tools or internet type Web 2.0 applications. In this case, we've got 4 out of the box. We've got Facebook, LinkedIn, RSS, and Twitter. And so if I go back to my home page, what we'll see down the left-hand side is these streams that are coming out here. So I can see my LinkedIn stream, Facebook, and SharePoint stream. So information that's perhaps been posted to SharePoint, perhaps to my site or my team site, can actually be rendered within Tibber. On top of that, we can actually, so look, keeping on the left-hand side of the screen, we can see my wall is obviously what we can see here on my wall, but there are some other things as well. We've got my chat history. So as part of Tibber, what we actually have is the ability, so there's somebody's just sent me an instant message. We have instant messaging built into Tibber. So on the bottom right-hand corner of Tibber, what we actually have is the ability to see people's presence, but also be able to communicate with them using instant message. You can see there that Adam has sent me an instant message. Then it's on shared services call, so he thought he'd say hello. So thanks for that, Adam. Moving forward, we're expecting to have tight integration with the IM and presence platforms from Link and WebEx as well. So a lot of organizations have already made quite heavy investments in those IM and presence platforms. And so what we're looking to do fairly shortly is being able to extend the IM and presence and instant messaging into the Tibber platform as well. So we talked about some of the other enterprise apps being able to tightly integrate with Tibber. That's another one that we're looking to integrate fairly shortly as well. So if we come back to my example wall here, one of the other things that we can also do from Tibber is actually when I log out and log back in again, it will actually give me an update of what I've missed since the last time I logged on, and that's just within the notifications on the top right-hand corner there. Okay, so this is kind of a very high-level view of Tibber. I hope that it's very high level. There are other stuff as well we can go into a little bit more detail if we need to. But for now, I think that's enough. I hope it's given you a fairly high-level flavor of Tibber, and I'm going to pass back over to Nigel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. I think we've got other fantastic applications for Tibber, obviously. And what I want to try and bring back into context is this from a shared service environment. And clearly, Tibber has many, many applications it can be used for. And I've actually tried to pick out one or two that I think are really key. So you're seeing now, and all of those Nimbus customers on the call, thank you very much, and you'll probably recognize this as the My Page in Nimbus. And this is where we deliver all the contextual and pertinent process information to everyone based on who they are and what they're doing. And you can see that I've logged on as Ian Gotts, and I've got Ian Gotts' homepage. But you can see down below here, I begin to see all the subjects. I think Ian's only following himself, which is not unlike him. But he can see that he's got all the subjects he's following are delivered in the process platform. And I think it gets very, very exciting when we start to imagine that we're a shared service operator who may be on a call and is following a process, and there's a question that's coming up that's not in the process. But there's no time to go and do a process review. There's no time to get that new process back into the business to be able to get the information back. So for all of those who are around storyboards, again and again, we can spend a lot more time after this call. There's not enough time to do it now, but I want to key out a couple of things around a storyboard, which is the step-by-step guide. This is the how-to of what I need to do to answer a question in a shared service organization. And you can see that, again, I've got my storyboard, and I've got these 9 things that I need to see or do, and I can acknowledge it. And as I'm stepping through, you can see that I know the next activity I need to perform is create a new job specification. But the person on the other end of the phone has asked me a question I don't really know the answer to. It could be unique, it could be quirky. You can see that I've got Tibber as part of my storyboard. So now I can post a question. I'm going to say, what agency do we use, and I'm tapping away, and excuse if I spell it wrongly, do we use in the UK? And then, as an example, I can post that, and whoever happens to know that answer, no matter where they are They could be on a train, they could be on a plane, and not on a plane obviously, they could be in an airport, but anywhere, or they could be static. But they know the answer. They can post that response automatically back into the storyboard in Nimbus to help that shared service operator add value to the question that's being asked of them. So again, this is around delivering customer service in a whole new way. So Nimbus provides that standard process design. It provides the standard single version of the truth for everyone to follow, but now it becomes real time, and that's the value add that Tibber brings. So we have it inside the storyboards already, we have it on the My page, but also I think there's another great area where we've actually placed Tibber, and that's within searching. So again, if we were having a face-to-face meeting, I'd be managing your disappointment in how difficult it is to find information inside your organization, and of course using Nimbus we mitigate that risk right up front. But again, what we can do here, and again for those of you who haven't seen Nimbus before, this is a natural benefit that you get from Nimbus purely by mapping the processes in Nimbus control. So if I just choose the same response, again, how do I create or review a job requisition, and I do a search, then you can see that I'm getting on my right-hand side here, I'm getting all the, let's call it static but pertinent contextual process-related information around this response about how do I create or review a job requisition in the subject of HR processes, and I can click on that and go right through to them. But I also get this new addition. I get this real-time subject delivery on this subject matter. So right in front of me, I can follow and see all the topics of conversation, all the subjects, and all the people who are involved in creating or reviewing a job requisition. So now, we can make this really powerful leap from, particularly in a shared service environment, from being a standard approach to what we're talking about, whether it's an HR process you're managing, a finance process you're managing, it doesn't really matter. As long as the subject's created in Tibber, you now have this real-time interaction to that. So I think that puts me into context of answering the question up front, which was, this, why can't we measure customer service by experience? We now have a platform to be able to do that. So in summary, I know that Susie's going to kill me because of the fact that I shouldn't be doing this, but I need to do it because I wasn't very technical in terms of how I put my slides on. But my last slide really was about what can you go and do, and it's really about, you can now, I have one request I think I'm going to say to you all. Please go and be social. You can log on to tibber.com, you can set up your own environments, you can get this demo account, just try it out. Go and see how this can be affected inside try.tibber.com, and we'll hope to see you in the very near future, all being very social. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for spending the time with us, and I'm going to hand back to Susie.
Thank you very much indeed, Nigel. So we've got lots of questions coming through. If you haven't already posted your question to me to put to the speakers, please do so. So kicking off with the questions that we've already got coming through. One question that I've had is, are the two kind of systems that we've now seen, are they used also independently of each other? And obviously, because of the recent kind of partnership between the two companies, they work very elegantly together, but are they also used within a shared services organization kind of independently of each other as well?
Yes, and it's Nigel responding to the question. Absolutely. You can use both applications independently and merge the two at the appropriate time. So again, there's nothing stopping you doing that.
Okay. Also, as far as one question was regarding whether or not this was a distraction for people, and how are you? What's the kind of feedback that you're getting from your clients as to whether or not this could actually be a distraction for employees?
It's an interesting question. Sorry, it's Paul Doyle here. Really, you could argue that there are plenty of distractions. Actually, what this does is actually focus on what's important, I think. We do work closely with the implementation team, and community managers are engaged quite often to essentially provide information and guidance on best practice on using Tibber. The example I showed earlier on about some of the event streams and the live streams, you can, if you wish, I mean, you can pick and choose which ones you want to interconnect to. And arguably, some organizations wouldn't necessarily want to have their users connecting to Facebook or to other social networking tools that are out there on the internet. That said, people can still access using smartphones anyway, so sometimes it's easier to provide that capability from within a web browser anyway, because people are going to access it one way or another. As a distraction, the information that's provided within or on Tibber is expected to be corporate information, so it is a behavioral thing and a cultural thing, and that's something that we would provide guidance on as well.
Okay, how do the work streams work? Is it a link into the application, and do you work on it as normal?
Yes, so essentially there are web parts within some of the applications. We use custom APIs as well. So for a SharePoint, for instance, there are different types of web parts that we can customize and build that we can connect into. Out of the box, the iframes connections into SharePoint or to some of the API connections into the other applications are fairly straightforward. It's something if we need to do a tighter integration, so let's say we did some work recently where a customer wanted to actually connect into a remedy fault, a remedy incident center, where when an incident occurred or a fault occurred within their data network, it would actually create a brand new subject. So it's fairly flexible in what you can do there. You can actually use it to create new subjects and actually to push information to subscribe users to those particular subjects and push information out to them so everybody knows what's going on at any given time. So out of the box, it comes with several different web parts that you can connect into those different applications. If you want more tighter integration with some other applications, that's perhaps some of the ones that we haven't named today, or even a custom application that somebody has written, then that's something absolutely we can do.
Okay, and also if you were going to just bullet how social networking helps an enterprise, helps a business, and it's not a nice to have, but it's a must have, what would you say that those top line bullets are?
That's a good question. I think that what I was talking about earlier on in terms of relevancy, I think what's true is that there's so much information. You go into any organization. Now, I actually only joined Tibber fairly recently, and as the case with joining any enterprise, it's not that there isn't enough information out there. There's plenty of information out there, whether that be in people's heads, whether that be actually stored in file servers, or whether they're in the applications. What Tibber does essentially, I know this is not a bullet, but it's kind of a description, is actually focus in on the stuff that's relevant. So I can subscribe to the right people, I can subscribe to the right subjects, and actually get the content that was relevant to me. So biggest bullet point, I would say definitely being able to access the right information for the right user, and obviously at the right time. There are some other really neat stuff like the geo information as well. So we can now actually provide subjects relevant to where people are working as well. I get an email every single day telling me there's a coffee van outside the office. Now, hopefully that's going to go away fairly shortly, and we'll have subjects based upon where people are working. What happens is you walk into that area of work, you are subscribed to that subject automatically, and when you walk away, that subject is dropped from your feed. So that's kind of one of the real kind of key features. So it is about the right information to the right person, the right time, and actually in the right geography as well.
And Susie, I'd like to add, if I can, to the question. I would say that social networking is, apart from Tibber, is interesting. It is non-contextual. It is non-pertinent. It's waffle. It's chat. And the thing that Tibber brings to the market is this move into importance because of the contextual delivery and the speed that it is delivered to the individual, and therefore adding so much value across many different applications within the enterprise. And that's the big shift and leap that Tibber has brought to the whole market. And particularly when you add it onto the process. all of a sudden there's an extra credibility and covenant in the governance of data and context and subjects. I think that is a real powerful benefit that everyone hopefully can take away today.
As far as SAP, for example, SAP is concerned, so the connection between this kind of technology and SAP, would it mean, for example, if you were to update something on Tibber and it was relevant to SAP, would it be updated in SAP? What's the kind of the synchronicity between the two platforms?
So out of the box, interconnectivity with SAP is using a pull model in the event stream. So essentially it pulls data from SAP, and you can set that to be every minute, every hour, or whatever kind of, however often you want that information to be pulled out of SAP. We can actually customize it so that we can create push model with SAP. And essentially what that could do is, by using the Tibber API, we can load information into SAP and out of SAP with it into Tibber, which has already been written. So it could essentially create new subjects or push information onto people's walls. And we do interconnect with standard SAP protocols such as IDOC and BAPI to kind of populate the Tibber instance.
Okay, good. You have a sorry, Paul. You have a poll up on your screen now. So just a quick break for questions. How useful has this webinar been for you? Very useful, useful, not really learnt too much, or in addition to all of that, I would like to learn more information. So you should be able to tick multiple boxes on that particular poll question. Moving on. Cost model, we don't want to know your pricing as such, just want to know a rough idea about what somebody can expect to pay in terms of some kind of pricing structure or a model, and also what kind of ROI you're typically looking for, something like this.
Okay, so the costing, typically it's based on a per user per month model. It depends on various different elements. So I'm not going to give a kind of a typical cost. It is a few dollars per user per month, let's say, for argument's sake, to give a kind of ballpark figure. But it really does depend, vary greatly. It depends on how much customization work is done, the size of the organization, whether it's on premises or in the cloud. So that's how it's modeled. In terms of ROI, there is plenty of information that we can provide on return on investment. Some of the benefits are very tangible, reducing the time that people spend searching for information. We can typically give that information. But also, there are some elements that are kind of less tangible, and those we can actually we can work with. And every organization is slightly different, and that's typically where we'll kind of spend a little time understanding exactly what the ROI is. We did some work with an oil company recently where we talked about ROI, and they told us that the I was so small that the rest was irrelevant, because the amount of investment in Tibber compared, it was almost like they said it was a no-brainer. There was no reason to actually create an ROI model. Not every organisation has that freedom, but it gives you an idea of kind of the comments that we get back.
Okay, good. Nigel, would you like to add anything to that?
Well, no, clearly, I think Paul's talked about it from a Tibber perspective, and obviously Nimbus has so many ROI opportunities that we'd have to have those one-on-one dialogues with everyone to secure that. And, we're seeing it right across the board with many different customers now, so it is a question that does need more detail. But I think what I was just going to ask, I was trying to whisper to Paul, and hopefully no one heard me. I think there were two case studies I was going to ask Paul to sort of talk about. One of which is the deployment at Macy's, and the other one which is the World Economic Forum. And so you can see the different types of usage, and that might give some kind of thought to some potential ROIs as people are thinking about it.
So a question I get asked all the time is, what are the typical verticals where social networking stands out and it becomes a more is kind of more relevant than others? There isn't. The answer is there isn't one. As Nigel pointed out, we've worked with the World Economic Forum, where the world's 200 leaders and industry leaders get together every now and again in Davos or wherever it might be. And we actually have created, or they have asked us to create a Tibber instance. Obviously it was on premises for security reasons, and that's held in Switzerland in a data center there. So World Economic Forum with all the global leaders are actually using Tibber to network and to socially collaborate on information when they're not actually in the room together. And the other one was Macy's, so that kind of obviously in a retail environment. Macy's have pushed out Tibber to all of their staff from the shop floor all the way up to designers, purchasers, etc. And what it's essentially done is flatten the structure of the organization. Whereas previously, if there was somebody had an idea or a product information that they thought was relevant, that information had to be fed up the organization before it was then fed back down again to the relevant person. By creating a social networking platform using Tibber within Macy's, they effectively flattened the whole organization so people can talk directly to other people, whether it be somebody on the shop floor talking directly to a purchaser, asking for a particular type, or if a person on the shop floor was asked for a particular color of clothing or a type of clothing, they can feed that back and give kind of anecdotal evidence of what they're being asked for across to the buyer and the people that make the decisions on what to buy and what to stock within Macy's. So that was kind of a real success story as well. We have plenty of various instances that we can share with if we need to go into a little bit more detail.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. We are running out of time. I'd just like to say to our viewers that you will be sent the details of Paul and Nigel, so you can follow up with them directly. Sharedserviceslink.com also uses Tibber, and I urge you to use it. It is certainly very useful for us as an organisation as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. I'd just like to draw your attention to a couple of webinars that we've got coming up. Please do join us next week for the Virgin Atlantic story, and in about 2 weeks' time for going to go through some best-in-class results, specifically focused around accounts payable. Also, we have a number of conferences coming up in London, Brussels, e-invoicing in Brussels, and also our Purchase to Pay conference in Chicago. Please do register for those as soon as possible. They will all be sell-out events. And thank you very much again to Paul and to Nigel, and I look forward to welcoming you next time.